Good afternoon, everyone. Suburban Homesteader, Wyoming, Arizona. This is Sandy. And today, I repotted and potted up orchids. So I'm going to show you how easy it is to do it. And then in this container over here, I actually cut a flower stem that was done flowering. And I'm going to see if I can make some new little baby orchid plants from it. Do you love orchids? I know I do. It's one of Joe's favorite flowers. And so this one right here has gone to Arizona, back to Wyoming, down to Arizona, back to Wyoming. And it has flowered beautifully twice for us. These two are another type of orchid. I can't tell you what kind they are. I got them with just the leaves, and I started rooting them in May. I put them in water. I changed the water every so often. It was in a warm spot, but not direct sun. And they started to root. In fact, these little leaves have just exploded in size. I'm going to show you how to do it. First, you need an orchid pot, and an orchid pot has holes in it. So there's a lot of air and breathability in there. And I have 3 different ones. The small one was a borrowed one. See how the stem comes up? And I'm actually going to cut that off. Now, the other orchids are in this jar, and I have been rooting them since May. It took a long time, and that is an air root that is actually coming out of there. But you can see the different roots that are coming down. And what I didn't know, that it's hard to make roots to root them in water. I didn't know, so I just tried it. And after a few months, here we are. Lots of roots. So what I did yesterday, now this is a medium that's called Orchid Potting Mix. It has a lot of bark in it, and you have to soak it overnight. Then I also got sphagnum moss. I put it in 2 different bowls, and I literally am soaking that overnight also. I want to absorb just tons of water into it. And this is what it looks like overnight. You can see that a lot of the water has absorbed into the orchid mix and the sphagnum moss. So first of all, I'm going to do one of the ones that I just got gifted as a leaf. And you can see where the roots are coming out, and you can see where the root is. That makes that air root that goes up also, because an orchid lives on a tree naturally. Here's the sphagnum moss, and that's what I'm going to use first. Now you can see that it is just soggy, so I'm going to wring out as much of it as I can have. Now orchids have over 25,000 species of orchids. Now probably the most famous is a vanilla orchid, which makes the vanilla bean. But see how I'm going to just cover up all those holes. The sphagnum moss will make it very breathable. So I'm going to work that, and then I'm going to take some of the orchid potting mix. I'm going to shake a lot of that water off first. I'm going to put some in there, and then I'm going to take my plant, and I'm going to be very careful with that long root. And I'm going to put that in there. I don't want to break off that air root. So I'm going to carefully hold that, and I'm going to start putting the orchid potting mix around it. Now you could use a chopstick, the end of a spoon. I'm just going to use my fingers to work it in around there. And I want it to make it so it's pretty secure. And then I also want to pile that up and then put some sphagnum moss around it. Now, some orchid seeds are so tiny you can only see them with a microscope. And you would, in a single seed pot of those, 3 million seeds in there. You have to be very patient if you want to grow those. It can take 7 years before you'd ever find a bloom. So here we are. We're ready with that one. I'm going to do one last step. I'm going to take that over to my sink, and I'm going to gently pour some water on there. Temp it, not warm, not cold. I just want it to settle down in around those roots. And that air root, eventually after I let it sit for a little bit, I'm going to put that inside. Now this is the orchid that's actually Joe's orchid. So I'm going to take that flower stem off. You can see It's starting to die back there. And I have some sphagnum moss that's very damp. And I'm going to try to make some orchid plants from that. Now, every few inches, there's a node, about every 3 inches on mine. And where that node is, I have the possibility to be able to make another plant. And so I'm just going to cut about exactly in the middle of that I can get between those nodes, right? And I'm going to end up with about 6 of them. Then I'm taking my knife and I'm just scraping on the sides, not at the tip of the node. That is going to go upward, but I'm going to do it on the side. So maybe just to stimulate some root growth. So then I'm going to make sure that it's pushed down in there. There's some sphagnum moss on the ends. There's sphagnum moss where I took my knife and scraped it. And then I'm going to put a lid on it. And it's just going to sit. There's a lot of moisture in there. There'll be a lot of humidity. And I put the date on there, the time, and we will see what I get. Now, we got this orchid years ago from Home Depot. I should have repotted it last year. But life gets busy and you just don't do everything that you should do. But see all those brown roots? Those I'm going to just cut those off. Be very careful. You don't want to break the roots that are growing. There's some, not just those thick ones, there are some very thin roots. So I'm going to take that, I'm going to rinse it off, and I'm going to cut some of those bad ones off. I'm disinfecting the scissors. I don't want to introduce any bad stuff to my orchid, right? So I'm just going to take my time, rinse them off real well. They're kitchen scissors. They're clean all the time, but I'm still going to do that. I'm going to clip all those bad things off. I don't need that. That all can go into the compost pile. Do you know that some orchids can live 100 years? That's right. You'd have to give it to your children, your grandchildren. So there it is when I just rinsed it all off. So we're going to put it in a pot. All of that stuff that was inside there is going in the compost pile. I'm not reusing that. I want some good nutrition for it. So I started with the sphagnum moss like the other time. I'm putting in some of the bark. It's a bark soil mixture. I'm going to put some inside there too. It's kind of like when you plant asparagus, that crown. That's kind of the feeling I get when I plant an orchid. And so again, I could use chopsticks, I could use a knife, I could use the end of a spoon. I'm just going to use my fingers to tuck it in. I'm going to gently tuck it in. I'm going to turn it around. I'll put some more of the potting mix in there. You can usually get that potting mix at any box store, or you can order it online. Now I'm going to add some sphagnum moss too. Because remember when I pulled that apart, all that bark had mostly biodegraded and there was just basically sphagnum moss and a little teeny bit of dirt left. Take your time. This is key. You don't really want a bunch of airspace in there. So just work it around, adding the potting soil and then some sphagnum moss. You just want to weave your way in between that. And of course, we'll run it under some water too, so that it can settle down also. So there it is. It's in my sink. It's topped with sphagnum moss. I'm going to rinse the leaves off. I'm going to water it some and just let it sit in my sink for a while, so all that extra water can drain out of there. Orchid number 2. And then we're going to just do one more orchid. So there's all 3 of them sitting on my table. I have a towel underneath because it will continue to drain for a while. And then I'll set them where I'm going to have them as their permanent home here. But they're just beautiful. That crazy air root coming out. But I'm really happy. And you can see those side leaves that have really grown up since I have been rooting them. But there's a total different texture in the leaf that is Joe's orchid and these ones that I got for free from a master gardener. She didn't know what kind of orchid it was, so I don't know. And with 25,000 species, it might be a little hard for me to tell until it blooms. But I am totally excited about this great addition to my living room. And how easy is that to repot an orchid? Now, I'm not wasting anything. So I have a colander, I have a dish towel, and I want to get all of that sphagnum moss out of my bowls. I had 2 different bowls. Just rinse them all off, let it drain through there, because I want to be able to use that again. I just squeezed out as much as I could get, and then I'm going to put it in a Ziploc bag that I'm going to leave open for a while. But see, there it is. The sphagnum moss is useful for something else. Let's dump the bark out too. Now I will lose some of the soil, granted. You know, I can always mix a little bit in the next time I do an orchid. I'm going to let that drain, and I'm just going to keep doing it until I have all of that bark rinsed out. And once again, I'll just pull it up, twist it, and make it so that I can save it all. So I'm just going to throw it back in some of those bowls. And there's my very last of it. I didn't know how much I was going to use, but I didn't want to have to stop in the middle to soak it overnight again. So I just used it all. It's real easy with the dish towel. You can just wring it out. And I'm going to actually put it outside for a while. I'm going to put it on a sheet of cardboard, put it on my table that's pretty protected, but it does get some sun so it can dry out. Because if I would just put it in bags right now, it would mold, and then I would have wasted that. And I don't want to do that. But I'm so excited about my new orchids. Well, what do you think? Do you think you could repot your orchid? A lot of times we get them for gifts for birthdays, holidays. Sometimes you get a gift of an orchid at the place that you work at. And then after it flowers, what are you going to do? A lot of times people just let them die off. But why? When they can live in your house for years and years and years. This is Sandi, Suburban Homesteader, Wyoming, Arizona. Do me a favor. Click the like button. Make sure that you subscribe so that you always get my videos. And I'll see you next time.